Good morning, class. Welcome to Friday, February 10th. And as we discuss this week's chapter, Chapter 4, some of the highlights of this week and highlights of the material itself is asymmetric sharing. If I can find it real quick in the PowerPoints. I'll just go through the reading. I'm sorry. Basically, asymmetric sharing. This is the concept that usually ties most people up. I can guarantee I can run the scenario in every class. Half the class will get it, and half the class will think they get it, but will not have it down. This theory is probably the toughest to get. The asymmetric sharing, my public key, or I should say my public key that's out in the world and my private key that only I should have access to, or I have access to your public key and you have only your private key that you have access to. In the slides it gave examples of both scenarios. I think that they used Bob and Alice, and then Bob encrypted it with Alice's public key, sent it to Alice, then Alice was to unencrypt it with her private key. The other scenario being Bob uses his keys he uses private key to encrypt it, then Alice gets the message and uses Bob's public key to decrypt it. Once again, what is decided is up to the network admins at that point, which route they're going to use. But for our theories class, make sure you stick with one person's keys. Once again, I usually go around the room and do this exercise, and I can guarantee every semester that 50% of the people will not get it. It's just a hard concept to wrap around. For my quizzes, I usually use me, my, you, and your. Although I do not, taking the names out of it makes it more difficult, but then I can guarantee that everyone that walks away from my course has this concept in their head and is not confused by it when they see it out in the real world. Make sure you take a look at that section in the book and just triple check that you have a firm grasp upon that theory. No matter what the scenario is, make sure that you're only using one person's set of keys. It'll never mix and match keys, and I think that's the biggest wraparound there is. No matter which route you take, realize that you only use one set of keys, and that stick with that set of keys. If you're using Bob's public key to encrypt it, make sure that Bob is using his private key to decrypt it. Walk through this scenario on your own. Even try explaining this scenario to someone else around you, and see if they can explain that back to you. I think that's the best way to learn it in this online environment, to make sure that you have the concept itself. Yeah, so definitely try that just to make sure you get that concept. The most valuable piece of information within this chapter. Once again, I'll be on this weekend. Definitely feel free to IM me, send me an email if you would like to discuss this, just to make sure that you have the concept down. I'd be more than willing to just have a short conversation with you. Or if you just want to say, hey, look, can you quiz me on this? I want to take a quiz and just to see if I pass the question itself. Once again, I make it more difficult just to make sure that that people walk away with this concept in a face-to-face class, I should say. Make it more difficult just the point that I can say, okay, they learn this, they have the concepts, and at least it's no longer 50% get it, 50% don't get it. Everybody in my class walks away with the concept of knowing how to use asymmetric encryption. Have a good Friday. I will be on this weekend.